Welcome back to the studio. A young lady who's been here several times now, Michigan State Police Trooper Kristi Angelo, is with us this half hour on WBCK. Good morning.
Good morning, Richard.
Thank you for being with us today. You know, we heard this story in the last few weeks about a spike in heroin overdose deaths in Calhoun County, certainly. Battle Creek, I think, was the center of that. And it was later revealed that some of the heroin on the street was laced with something more than just heroin, and it's thought that that had something to do with this spike. This is something you've been following, this whole situation, hasn't it?
Yes.
And this is not new to you, is it?
No.
What is this that's in this batch of heroin that's gotten this attention?
Well, it hasn't been confirmed. Suspected is carfentanil, and carfentanil is actually a large animal elephant. It's used for like an elephant tranquilizer.
Oh my! And the suspicion is that some of that was in this batch. This must have happened before, which is why you're suspicious now.
Well, it started like in September when we got information as far as 19 deaths in Wayne County in Michigan. Obviously, we had a large amount in Ohio, and then there were confirmed cases in Wayne County in September. So that's why it's suspected, and it takes more for somebody to be revived. With an naloxone or what we call Narcan. It takes more to bring them back, if at all, if you can.
All right, so let's understand for a second the whole addiction thing, if we can. So someone's on heroin. They're looking for that effect of heroin more and more as they become more and more addicted. I believe the notion is that the more addicted you become, the more you need, or at least you're looking for that more. Is that true?
I would say, based on what I've been told, as far as speaking with people that are dealing with addictions, yes. You have to remember that 80% of heroin addicts started with prescription medication.
Something that would have been easily available to them, perhaps.
Right. They may have a sports injury, have surgery, have a tooth extraction, and be prescribed a opiate, which, it's prescribed by a doctor. So they take it not knowing, that they may become addicted, and then they become addicted. And as that gets harder for them to get, or they get introduced to heroin, that's how they become connected with the heroin. So we have to remember that 80% of people that use heroin were introduced to prescription drugs first.
And then by virtue of availability, they've graduated, if you will, to something like heroin, which obviously you don't need a prescription. You know the right place to go, you'll find it.
And unfortunately, it's cheaper.
Yeah. And we'll talk about how we got to the point of the suspected carfentanil component of all of this, which we presume has caused some of these other problems. And we'll get to that in just a second on WBCK with Trooper Kristi Angelo, Michigan State Police. WBCK, we're here this half hour with Trooper Kristi Angelo, the Michigan State Police. We're talking a little bit about addiction and heroin and how sometimes spikes in heroin overdose deaths have to do with other factors. You mentioned that this carfentanil is a animal tranquilizer for big animals, so we presume then a little amount can affect a human quite substantially.
The amount at the size of a snowflake can kill a human.
A snowflake?
A snowflake. So
if you're an elephant, 2 snowflakes or something. I mean, this is powerful stuff.
It's 10,000 times more potent than morphine.
So I'm trying to understand this now. If I'm a heroin seller and I want to maintain my customer base, why do I allow carfentanil to be part of my mixture? I mean, don't I want to keep those customers coming back to me?
Well, They may not know that it is laced with anything.
I see.
I mean, I don't believe they're testing it themselves. And a lot of it isn't being, manufactured right here. I'm sure some of it is. Now, what I've heard through information with sitting in drug court and then doing the Families Against Narcotics, and speaking with people who are in recovery and also in active addiction, is if somebody overdoses and it's fatal, somebody that is dealing with an addiction doesn't necessarily think that's what they may have taken too much. So this is good stuff. I'm going to try it, but I'll do a little less.
Oh.
So it's not necessarily that they're thinking that this killed somebody, this was a fatal amount. It's that they took too much, and it's not going to happen to them. Because just like alcohol, we know people get in the car and drive all the time when they're intoxicated. Why? Their logic goes out the window, right? So you have the same type of thing, only it's a deadlier concoction, or an immediate deadlier concoction.
All right, so let me ask the question a different way. What have you learned is the motivation for carfentanil being in a heroin mixture at all? Why would it be there?
Richard, I cannot honestly answer that straight out, other than it's a different concept in how it gets there, or what someone is thinking. I'm not inside somebody else's brain, so I really don't know.
Somebody might be thinking it might accentuate a heroin high.
Exactly.
Man, but a snowflake is deadly.
But most people aren't going to know that it's actually laced with carfentanil. We don't know that necessarily, that it is. And any street drug you get is going, you have that chance of it being laced with something different, and you don't know what's in it.
It's not like the FDA sponsors the manufacture of this. You just don't. You don't have those safeguards.
Exactly.
So I presume then, because carfentanil is an animal tranquilizer, it's legal, right?
It's not legal to possess it as a human. I would imagine it would have to be like zoos, veterinarians.
Okay.
So to be here legally, no.
All right. So it has its uses, and that's it.
Right.
So it has any investigation that you're aware of determined how this gets to a heroin mixture then? There must be a black market somehow.
It comes through a black market, absolutely. As far as confirming, there's suspected carfentanil. It has not been confirmed that it is carfentanil. However, it has been confirmed in Wayne County. But as far as Calhoun County, it's suspected at this time, not confirmed.
When you read the tea leaves, some of the symptoms and circumstances are similar.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you have an overdose, we have the antidote of naloxone or Narcan. If somebody is overdosing on something more than just a regular, and I shouldn't say regular, I'm sorry, I'll correct myself, prescription opiates, people can overdose on prescription opiates.
Sure.
Also on heroin, which is an illegal opiate. We carry 2 vials, nasal sprays, of the naloxone as law enforcement.
I see.
It will take more than 2 if your heroin is laced with fentanyl or carfentanil or something different. So those will be indicators that it could be something more than just the heroin, is that it's going to take more. And with carfentanil, many times the Narcan is not strong enough at all, using, 4 or 5 doses of it.
Just to be clear for folks who know nothing of this other than what they hear and see in media, you actually have a drug that when you encounter an overdose case could counteract the effects of that overdose.
Right. Law enforcement recently started carrying it also. Usually it's through the EMS.
I see.
And obviously at the hospital it's always there.
Sure. But, boy, as law enforcement now carrying that, you've had to become schooled in how to handle that.
Absolutely.
That's beyond maybe the limits of your job description once upon a time. It's a new job these days, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, my goodness. We'll talk more about this in just a minute on WBCK. Few more minutes with Trooper Kristi Angelo, Michigan State Police, community service trooper. So you hear Kristi talking with us on a number of issues as something of a liaison between us and the Michigan State Police. So, this is a complicated problem. I mean, here you have addiction, which you can't just shut off like you shut off a faucet or something. And you can't just say, okay, don't have heroin right now because it may be extra bad for you. Folks who are addicted just can't shut that off.
Exactly.
So this is a challenge then to try and get the word to them that there may be something else at play here. But that can be complicated too. How does law enforcement approach this? And maybe it's not clear.
There's not a clear-cut answer to that, Richard. However, something like this, going out, coming onto the radio and raising awareness of what is going on. Then also providing information when we're responding to overdoses and doing what we can as far as literature at the hospital. And then as a community coming together and building our resources and then also sharing that information is very important.
So at least somebody might hear it who might be inclined to shoot up and then find out maybe I shouldn't today, or maybe I should learn more about this, at least if they can get their wits about them on it.
Exactly, and you also have to understand that injecting is not the only way for heroin or even prescription medication. They can sniff, snort, smoke. So injecting is people are looking for that injection. The needle track marks, or there may not be that, and it's not so apparent that someone is using all the time. Yeah. That stigma of somebody falling down, high from injecting heroin is there when that's not what we're always seeing.
You may be seeing some folks who generally function well enough to maybe camouflage their addiction.
Absolutely.
Think about that for a second. All right. You mentioned early in our comments about the organization Families Against Narcotics. You're involved with that group. Do they try and step up in these cases and try to get more word out? What's the function for them here?
We raise awareness, provide education, and then also do, speak out as far as removing the stigma. So right now for Calhoun County FAN, we provided bags with literature for someone that may present in the emergency room with an overdose. They may not want help right away, but if they are willing to take that information, it might be something that sinks in later on. This is something I may need help with, or with family members, being able to provide the family members. Southwest Michigan FAN was instrumental in getting the naloxone or the Narcan out with law enforcement and community to help prevent the overdoses.
Right. That which you see, I presume, in an emergency room with an overdose case, that person may not be ready to try and face what they're dealing with. And so if you can put a little literature in their hands on the way out, maybe when they have a private moment, they can look at that and you can make the inroads that way.
Absolutely. And if you can connect them with a recovery coach or with that information, that's one step closer to someone being able to get the help that that is needed.
Is heroin the big drug now? Is that the drug of choice?
Heroin has become very popular. We still are losing more in the United States to prescription medication. I can't go county-wise, but I know that in November in Calhoun County we had 23 overdoses. I cannot comment on how many were fatal, but I know that there were 23 overdoses from heroin. That doesn't include numbers that we may have had from prescription medication.
Right.
And obviously this isn't something that just affects young people. We see it in any, elderly to someone, younger. So
Really?
It's affecting a large part of our community. So there's no longer, we have to remove that stigma that it's somebody that's homeless on the street, because no, it's not. It's our next door neighbor. It's everyone.
And we'll leave it right there. We'll stay in touch on this issue, all right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Richard.
Trooper Kristi Angelo, Michigan State Police.